Hey, welcome back everybody to this edition of Get Quick, Get Sick, where we're continuing our drum series. My name is Cryptochronica and I'll be your host today. We're going to continue in keeping our drums dynamic and diverse and figuring out how to build them from the ground up so that they sound nice right away. And they already have us doing this kind of dancing motion. Pre-note, you might want to watch these videos at 1.25 speed so that it can, you can really burn through these lessons and soak them up and save your time and get to producing faster. So today we're going to talk about two things, or I guess three real things. I'll try and do them quickly. I tend to be long-winded. So we're going to talk today about using different kicks to form their own internal grammar so that there is a give and a take even amongst the kicks. That's really interesting. Another thing we're going to talk about is the ghost kick as a concept and how and why you should use it. And then we're going to talk about what I call the hat maker, and I'm going to leave that for you in this track so that you can have that when you subscribe. Okay, cool. So very first thing, let's talk about kicks. This kick is just a single kick. It's doing everything it needs to be doing. It's hitting hard, it's stumpy, it's got a full frequency response, starts up at the top. I see it's got a little click there and it continues down the entire frequency. And it has this big old boomy sort of bass bottom, which is what gives it that when it hits us in the chest. So this kick is great. It works just fine for what we're trying to do. But a single kick can be kind of boring and kind of tedious. And it's nice to have diversity even in our kicks. So I'm going to pull up another channel here, a MIDI channel. And you can do this with any sort of plugin or any sort of kick maker. You could layer up different hat samples or different shaker noises, different kinds of clicks, different kinds of lasers, and then you could also stretch these or shrink these as desired. So this one kick, say we only really want that first sort of thicky thump without the sub sound, you can fade it off just like that. Or if you wanted this kick to be really large and really long and occupy a lot of time in your grid, you could totally just stretch this out as well and use a different sort of warp mode. I wouldn't use beats for kick. I would probably try and preserve the tone. So I would use the tone, and now you have a much longer kick. It's actually got some nice grains on top of it. I don't know if we need that. Let's try texture, which will give us a lot of grains. Turn up the flux. Oh, a pretty big, beefy sort of kick. Each of these different warp modes has their own characteristics and qualities. I'll talk about them another time. Complex, just if you're looking, complex is what you would want to use on vocals. And beats is usually what you'd want to use when you're stretching like breaks and drum beats and stuff that people have already recorded. But let's not do any of that. Today I'm going to advertise a plugin that I use all the time and I love it, and maybe they will sponsor me. Yeah, right. Okay, cool. So we're going to talk about the Kick plugin by Sonic Academy, the Kick 2. This is a really, really great plugin for generating a lot of kick ideas really quickly. So it's kind of like a TR-808 drum sampler synth, but it is a little bit more dynamic and it's built for the digital frame, or the digital paradigm. So I'm going to start to select different pitches here to get this kick completely dialed in key, and I can adjust the length and figure out how long I want it, as well as the envelope, so that this kick can form a kind of shape that I designate. It's a really, really useful plugin, and there are all kinds of things that you can do with it. This is one of those ones that I use in every track, and I don't advertise plugins unless I use them in every single track, and they're absolutely critical to my workflow. This is one of those kicks, or this is one of those plugins. So I'm going to build a kick really quickly and then show a couple of ways to resample it in different flavors. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. So we know that our snare fundamental is in the key of E. So that snare fundamental is coming in an E. You can see right here, this is an E. I can scroll over it, and down here in this corner, it'll tell me what it is. So it's saying it's a D sharp, but technically 160 is where E starts. And this is kind of at 159, so it's a slightly flat E. I'm gonna make this track in the key of E. So I want my kick to be harmonious with that so that it's not competing or out of tune or sounds shitty. So I'm going to just make a MIDI clip here. I'm going to put these in all in the same places as my kicks above, these placeholder kicks, and this is where I'm going to generate my kick. But I'm going to want these kicks to do slightly different things before I make a ghost kick, which will give us a lot of sort of pattern and flavor with our kicks. So we have our kicks doing this pattern, consolidate, copy, copy, and copy. And I'm going to turn this kick off and make sure our kick 2 is doing some things that I like. So I'm going to start it at a high C, not as high as it can go, but 4,000 hertz is a good place. Oh, not C sharp. Do it at C. There we go. I'm going to have it come down in pitch to a B, because B is in the key of E as well. Come on. Come on, friend. Come on. Hurry up. Where are you? There we go. No, A sharp. There we go. And then I'm going to have it sync all the way down at its fundamental to an E, which is kind of what where my fundamental is going to be for this song. What am I doing? Right here. So this is going to be a low kick, low sounding thump. And I'll pull, yeah, that can come down to a G as well. So 24 hertz. How does that sound? I'm going to trigger it and see what we've got coming out of this thing. Ooh, that is a thumper. And we're going to slow it down so it's not occupying as much space. Cool. Maybe we'll do the higher E. There we go. That sounds a little bit more like a kick. And I'm going to shape its amplitude. So I want to leave a little space right here in the beginning. So this is going to be quiet. And I want to shape this so that there's some space because I'm going to put in my own clicks and hi-hats, which will give us a certain frequency, sort of frequency response up on the top. But I was telling you before in that last snare video that triangular shape is really desirable in kick and snare samples because it allows them to the fundamental and that transient to catch the top and the bottom of the limiter and really kind of like snag it and then shape down like a triangle from that point and decrease, have the body kind of decrease like that. And that tends to sound really, really good. So we're going to go for that sort of triangular shape, put that maybe 75, and I'll come down here at about 50. Can round this up over here. And what's nice about the kick is you can curve these sort of envelopes, which is super sweet. How does that sound? That is super punchy and super nice. Now I'm going to find another click that I like. Again, you don't have to watch this video, I guess, if you don't have this plugin. I'm trying to be quick about it. Ooh, that sounds so stupid. That's nice, but it's a bit loud. I don't know if I need hats. I think I'd rather go with the click for this sound. Chill. Nice. And let's take a look at what that's doing. So I'm going to, underneath my kick track, I'm going to make another channel, turn it on to resampling so that I can visualize it. Again, I'm a visual learner. I like to see this stuff. Come on, go away. I should map record. Let me see if I can do that. Oh, I can. Cool. So Command K opens up the key mapping mode. So I'm going to click this and I'll click why don't we click 9? So every time I press 9, it'll start to record. And this way I don't have to pull down my screen so that I can access it. Because anytime my mouse comes up here, this stupid thing gets in my fucking way. So now I can press 9 and recording will start. Oh, that's such a good idea. Dope. Dope. Okay, so I think I have a limiter on and so it's really, really smashed because this kick has already been limited. So let's try it again. Cool, that's got that triangular shape that is really desirable. That's a really tasty kick. So we have one kick here doing what it should be doing. Also, we can see that it's got a pretty decent sized tail. And if we have this much space before our snare, it's generally a good rule to not, you want to leave space for the basses and for the instruments. And since kicks are such full frequency instruments, they can very easily clutter up a mix. Now, if I was going to make my kick some huge beast of a noise, like if it was going to be fucking this long, and this is cool, this is almost like an 808. That's a super cool noise and that's super fun, but this leaves us no space for other instruments. So if you're going to do something like this, you should almost treat your kick, the single 808 kind of like sound, as the bass in itself, and you wouldn't layer up an 808 bass there. But this is desirable in its own way for a variety of genres and a variety of things, and that's another thing that I like about the kick too, is it's great for making 808s. But I want my kicks to be a lot more concise and tight and out of the way. So I'm going to get back to like the 450 region and resample that. Cool. That is much more of what I want for this track. So we'll do that one. Let's keep that kick there, and let's resample another one. I am going to make another track, I suppose. Let's duplicate this, turn on resampling. We don't need these now. I definitely don't need that smothered piece of shit. So we'll put this down here, and I'm gonna resample maybe 2 or 3 more kicks, and I want them to be in the same family of this kick. So basically, I'm just thinking like a little bit of differences in length. So we'll have like a kind of quick little clippy kick, and maybe we can come down on the highs ever so slightly, so this isn't as hard or as solid of a kick. Let's resample that. Nice. That might be a little bit puffy. You know, it's got that kind of sound that I don't necessarily love, but we'll do that for now. And let's make one more bigger kick with a different tonality as a whole that we can come up on. So I'll just resample on the same channel, and let's make a bigger, longer, slightly different toned kick. And that will give us 3 kicks to play with. And 3 kicks to use in succession here. So I'll come back up with our click sound. When I turn this on in the Kick 2 preset, the Kick 2 plugin, it lets me see what kind of shape that click is taking. So I can affect the length of it, or I can extend that out. And I like to see that because it's kind of nice to know how my click is interplaying with the kick itself. So this yellow stuff, which is the click, is taking up a lot of that space right in the beginning of the sample, which is good because you don't need your kick to be right there. Kicks start at the top and they act as a pitch envelope. So it's like a pew, pew, but it happens so fast, it just sounds like a dum, dum. But technically it's starting real high and it's ripping down really quickly. And that's exactly what's happening with our pitch. We're starting at 4,000 hertz, and this is whipping down really, really quickly and giving us that pitch vibe. You know, I should probably bend these, because if so, that will sound even more natural than a sort of artificial linear math equation. So let me actually try that. I hadn't even thought about that. That sounds pretty interesting. I'm not going to resample that kick. Let me just live with it. And I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger, and I'm going to do a couple other things with it. So it's our biggest kick yet. It's definitely our longest kick. Let's change the envelope ever so slightly so it's got a little bit more body, and we could do something super crazy like that, but I'm not going to get all nuts like that. But let's give this one a little bit more of a tail, and let's lift this a little bit more. So it's just a little bit thicker and rounder of a kick all in all. And we could honestly even change the click out. So now we have a completely different sounding kick. I'm going to resample that. Dope. Cool. So now I have 3 kicks, and I want to interchange these in a way that gives them their own kind of grammar. So if this is my main kick, and we're going to make this the main kick because we've put, because it leaves us a lot of space, but it still is meaty and bodily. These other kicks have their own kind of character. This little one would be great if it was layered on top of the bass sample. So if my basses were coming in right away, this would be a good kick to have it hit really, really powerfully, but then it would get out of the way to make a lot of room for the bass. And this one, you know what, let's go even more dramatic. Let's make this kick even longer and even thicker. Let's go to like 600. That's a pretty big kick. That's occupying a lot of space. This one I wouldn't want to put right in front of my bass sample because it's going to take up too much space that the bass would be coming in on. So this might be something that would work really well kind of on its own with its own sort of impact. So I have these 3 different kicks now. Put them all into one channel. Let's kill that. And now let's plug them in. So we're going to need to start to think now as we start to get this beat to a place where it's got a solid foundation. We're going to start to decorate this track with chords and instruments and effects and vocals and all of those things that make a beat more than a beat. They actually make it a song. We're going to have to start to strategize a little bit about where we're going to put our sub, because the relationship between the sub, the kick, and the snare is what people dance to. That is the rhythm section. And we have our snares already locked down. These snares are not changing now. That we have nice big snares. We have lots of reverb on them. They have a full frequency occupation. They're really good snares. So we want to work around the snares. Their positions have already been occupied. So we want our kick and our sub to speak to the snare in a really, really nice way. So we're going to use our first kick right when this comes in. And I think we could probably use, maybe I'll just do it like this. I'm just going to keep this kick channel off. I'm going to color it red to let me know that it's wrong. I'm going to color this one green to let me know that this is the kick channel that we're going to use. And I'm going to turn that off. And this way I have these samples. So right now I'm just going to use this first kick and fill this in all of our blanks like this. Boom and boom and boom. Cool. So this will be the kick that we're using. But once I get my bass in here, I want to get these other kicks into play as well, because I built them and it would be a shame for them to go to waste. So we've got that. Let's chill. I deleted that kick 2 plugin. Okay, let's kill that because that's a CPU hog. Sweet. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Okay, so this is what we got with that kick. And let's hear it in relationship to our snare too. Oh, this kick is too loud. It's 12 decibels too loud. So I'm going to come down, make sure that it's balanced with the snare at -12. And I'm going to put that limiter back on so that everything's all limited. So I'm pressing 1. Cool. So I think that a good place for that big kick would be right here, because I don't necessarily see any sub landing in that space. So I'm going to put the big kick there. So that way we've got that one. It's got a nice big punch. Put that there. So now we're using the big kick, and I know we're going to use the small kick. And if we could have this hit really quickly and get out of the way before this snare here. So it's like kind of a quick little noise. Cool, yeah, that works pretty well. Sweet, so now we have different kicks as well as different snares, and this interplay is more interesting than if it was all just one kick. And they're very subtle, slight changes, but again, that's what the human ear notices. We don't know what it is that we're noticing, but when there's small details, even though we don't know what it is that we're noticing, we know that it doesn't sound mechanical and repetitive and tedious. So it's all about tricking human perception. That is how you get good drum beats. So I can close that now. I have my kicks kind of set up. And now I'm going to introduce what's called the ghost kick. And the ghost kick is really great for having a little bit of low-end thump and getting that swag going right away without being over the top. Because if I was going to have this kick land every time before the snare, it would just get to be too much. So my snare is here. So if I had this kick land like this, I can also get rid of both of these snares now. So we're freeing up mind space because that snare and that kick sample are no longer in use. We have something much better. Close this down, free up mind space, free up focus. I'll leave this in here for you so that you guys can look at that when you download this project after subscribing. So if I were going to have this kick like that too, and I was going to do something like, oops, I'm sorry, I meant right here. We could do this. This is interesting. It's dancey. We could even do it like that. And that could be really cool. That will give us a nice sort of groove here. So that's cool, but the thing is, we don't need these really sharp, really clear electronic samples coming through. Because when you listen to a drummer play, they're not kicking with the same impulse and the same power on every sort of swaggy sort of like move. It's going to be like boom, boom, cat, boom, cat. But those boom, boom, cats are not the same volume every time. So often when we watch a real drummer play, they're using what's called the ghost kick, where they don't put as much oomph and as much power into their foot when they come down on that kick sample. So we're going to try and recreate that. Shut up, cell phone. Oh, I better answer this. Got a student coming up, you guys. You might make an appearance in the next video. Isn't that exciting? Chill. Okay, cool. So the ghost kick is basically, you don't want to change the kick too much, but you want to take off the highs and you want to drop the volume. So I'm going to make another channel. We're going to call this GK Ghost Kick. And I like these. These are cool. That's a nice little taste. This one I'm going to leave because this is my main downbeat kick that's going to stay there. But these ones, these smaller samples, they're going to work as our ghost kick. So what I'm going to do to make that ghost kick is I'm going to throw on an EQ, as you would expect. I'm going to take off some of the highs so that we're still getting that thumpiness. Yeah, we're getting some thump. You can open it up a little bit. Yeah, about 1,000. Okay, cool. And I'm going to drop this 6 decibels, or maybe 4 decibels, or maybe we'll have them alternate. But I'll drop it 6 for now and see how that feels. So now it's not going to be as in your face, but it's still doing some things that are kind of cool and rhythmic and desirable. And a good thing that you can do with ghost kicks is like how would I explain this? It's like sort of pre-beat builds, and I'll show you what that means with this kick in particular. So let's try that. You know, I'm also going to put this up at 60 hertz, which is taking away a little bit of that kick fundamental, but it doesn't need to be so meaty and so big. Remember, this is supposed to be like a drummer kind of barely touching the kick pedal. Cool. Cool, so this one I don't like at all. And if I'm gonna do this one here, I'm gonna be careful about this because I wanna leave these spaces for fills. So we'll just do something like this for now, and we'll probably take them out later. And another thing that I am going to be aware of is that I don't need these ghost kicks when I have basses there. I don't want them competing for that sub-range frequency. So these are okay for now. They're okay for now, but we might end up killing a bunch of them. I just want to put them in there to get that ghost kick concept in your minds. Okay, cool. So that's the ghost kick. That's using 3 different kicks to have a sort of internal grammar, and they're just slightly different, but they are making a big difference to our sensitive human ears, which are good at picking out repetition. And we hate it. We absolutely hate the beat machine. We want our kicks to feel natural. Now, another thing that we can do is our main kicks, our main downbeats, the ones that we programmed from the very beginning with these MIDI notes, those should most of the time be on the grid. But the ghost kicks, if you want there to be a lot of natural rhythm, the ghost kicks can be completely off the grid. So you could go in and you could say that, oh, I want this one to be a little bit early and I want this one to be a little bit late, and we'll hear how that sounds, and maybe that will give us a cool sort of off-grid kind of swag. So that actually works really well. That was nice. Or you could do the old D trick and give them the D and open up the D thing and either give them a little bit of earliness by coming down on the milliseconds, or a little bit of lateness by coming up and adding milliseconds to the phrase before the Ableton reads it. But I actually like what I did there. That was kind of unintentional. So I'm going to consolidate that, and we're going to use 1 before and 1 after. 1 early and 1 late in that place. And then in this case, if our snare is here, let's have it be late. So it's going to do the same thing that this one's doing. So cool. So now we have lates after the snare and early kicks just before the snare. And that gives us a nice sort of natural kind of feel on these ghost kicks. And that is what we're looking for, is naturalness. Now this, what I've noticed is when drummers play, when they do a roll, when they go when they're playing a fill, they almost always speed up. It's really hard to not be a little bit early when you play drums and you do a fill. Maybe some drummers out there like KJ Saka and those other great EDM drummers can get away with not doing that, but most natural drummers kind of speed up. So let's kick this up just a little bit, and we're going to kick this one up 1 more. So I'm using the 512 grid setting, and I moved this up 2, so that's technically 1/256th of a bar fast. All right, let's hear how that sounds in context of the beat. Cool. Yeah, that sounds really good. So, I mean, it sounds really good without any chords or melody or music or anything like that. It's just like listening to a drum solo forever. But this totally works now. So we have a ghost kick. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about in this video, besides multiple kicks, which you should make, every track should have multiple kicks, in my opinion, and every track should have ghost kicks, in my opinion. Even if you only use it once, just go through your checklist and kind of follow all these things that I've been teaching you as far as drums go, and you're going to get more interesting drums. Not every song needs every technique, but it should. Honestly, if you just follow these techniques, these concepts, your drum beats are going to instantly level up if you have diverse snares, if you have diverse kicks, if you have ghost kicks, if you have wide hi-hats and shakers that are slightly detuned from one another and slightly off time from one another. Everything is going to accumulate. And this is the difference between the pros and those people who are really good. The pros are that extra 2%. And it's hard to get that extra 2% because that extra 2% is the difference between 98% good and 100% straight A perfect. And to be 100% straight A perfect, you have to get that 2%, but that 2% is not any one thing or even any 2 or 5 or 10 things. That last 2% that separates the 98% from the 100% is 1,000 little things that accumulate throughout the process of your track, and they add up. It's like 0.001% here and 0.003% there. And those things aggregate into 2% at the end of the process. So you need to start with them in the beginning when you're building your track from the ground up right away, which is kind of what we've been doing in this drum beat. So go back, rewatch those earlier videos at 1.5 speed, go through them really quickly, and remember and try and create a checklist of all these little things that I've been doing, because they're going to aggregate in sum so that you have a really, really dope final 2% of detail that the good people, who are still good beat producers, good producers, don't think about and don't have. It's the difference between someone who's really good but is still an amateur and a motherfucking professional. So we want to be professionals. All right, chill. So let's talk about the hat player. Now, the hat player is a fun instrument that you can use to make these kinds of tedious, boring hats, even though they're wide and even though they're slightly detuned from one another and slightly pitching around and doing all those different things with velocity so that they sound interesting. The hat player is a great way to get your hats to move even more, and this is used so much in trap. So I'm going to create a new MIDI tab here. I'm going to call this hat player, and I'm going to show you how to make this instrument. It's really easy, and then you can have it and use it in your beat making. So the first thing you want to do is put on a MIDI, let's put on an arpeggiator, and I'm just going to grab a single hat sample here. Let me grab this one. Yeah, I'll grab that one. It's nice and loud. I'm going to consolidate it. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make another audio track. I'm going to make this mono. So I'm going to put that into here, and I'm going to use the audio effects. I'm going to use my trusted utility plugin. I'm going to set this all the way to left. So that should just be a mono sample. Oh no, why isn't that doing that? That's how it used to be. All right, I'll just put mono. Cool. Now this is mono. I'm going to refreeze it and flatten it. So So now this doesn't have any of that panning built in there, which is great because we want to play the panning with the hat player. So this is a completely mono sample. Now in our hat player, we're going to drag this sample and we're going to put it in here, and a new simpler should come up. We're going to right click and make that simpler a sampler because the sampler is a better instrument in my opinion. And we're going to group these guys together. So now that they're grouped, we can get rid of this. We don't need that sample anymore. We can pull this back over. We're going to have that there. We don't know if that's where we're going to put in our hat player. And I'm going to make a MIDI clip. I'm going to make a few MIDI clips throughout this segment here, and those are where our hats are going to come in. So why don't we pick a spot where we think we could get a little bit of hat diversity? And I might just focus on the hats and the kick and the snare here, because this is the relationship that I really care about. So we'll solo all of these things. So this, super tedious. It's like literally tick, 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 tick. That gets super old. So we want to give our drummer a little bit of vibe. So we'll put some hats in here. We'll play some hats in we'll play some hats in this part. That's a good place for it. And we'll play some hats right here. So those will be our places that we will mute out of this because we're going to play our own hats. So I'm going to checkerboard those, mute those out of the way. I'm going to put some MIDI clips in these portions. I'm just going to use the C setting because C note will just play our sample back for us as opposed to pitching it around. And you can pitch it, and that's totally cool. And we're going to talk about doing that as well. Let me grab a pitch plugin for the MIDI instruments because that way we can pitch. Now we're going to start to macro some of these settings to our instrument rack so that way we can play it. It's far more of an instrument than it is. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the volume down to 0 so that it's this volume coming in through our sampler. I'm going to turn off the key. Okay, and now I'm also going to take it off of sync because I really like this sort of creaky sound. The sort of speeding up and slowing down off the grid. And if it's on sync, everything is timed to the grid. It's either 8th notes or quarter notes, 6th notes, blah, blah, blah. We want this to be doing this kind of thing. So that way, when you just use little adjustments, you're going to get all kinds of interesting rhythms that are kind of off grid. I don't know why, but it sounds like it got louder. All right, whatever, that's fine. Okay, so this is the first thing we're going to map. I'm going to map that to macro 1, and we're going to call this rate. Now I'm going to map the pitch to macro 2, and we're going to call this pitch. And the last thing I'm going to map is the panning. So I'm going to map this. I'm going to pick my panning, and I'm going to map that right here. So that way we can actually play the panner with these knobs here. Okay, that should be good. That should do it for us. So we can close, we can close this down. We don't have to think about it. And now let's start to just draw in some automation and play some things. So that's nice. I'm gonna actually have my drum player speed up a little bit into this. So that's a good place to start. So let's put on automation mode. Come over here, turn off the key arming, and we'll put on automation mode. And now, if you know anything about me, you know that I hate automation because I find it to be really messy, but sometimes it's unavoidable. And this is one of those times. Cool, so that's like him speeding up there, or her. She's speeding up in that space, which sounds nice. Let's also, because this is a completely mono sample, let's play some panning. So let's have it start over here and then kind of end over there. So you're sweeping from left to right in the same direction that people read. And I find that going from left to right really works, at least to my mind. You can go in any direction, but I like to go from left to right. I guess you can go in any direction. Don't hold tight to that. So that's cool. That sounds good. And then we can also do some pitching. I don't think we need to in this case. Pitching is used in trap all the time, especially if you're going to use this kind of instrument, but instead of a hat sample, you use a snare sample. Pitch, snares, and trap go, go together like bread and butter. So let's just try some pitching, and I'm going to come down and pitch. Oh, 74 steps is way too much. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to shape this pitch envelope. I'm going to shape this macro so that its pitching is a lot more in control. I will also probably shape the panorama as well. Of course, I've already done some effects, so maybe I'll leave the pan opening, but the pitch, I just want it to come down -12 at the most and go up 12 at the most. So that way it's not all over the place, because that'll just get really unwieldy. So now we've got the pitch open, and I'm gonna have it come down maybe 7 steps. Cool. I think that's super, super obvious and really extreme, but I'm trying to make a point today. Okay, cool. So now we have that. Let's do something with this one. Let's get this back at 0 because we don't need this to be starting at 7. So I'm going to do it so it's back at 0. And I am going to play the panning. Again, we can go from left to right. Maybe in this case, we'll go from right to left, but we'll go from left to right. We'll keep that automation lane open. And I am going to change the rate as well, because we want this to either speed up or slow down and just feel a little bit different. And with the rate, all you need are really, really small, really small adjustments to get a lot. You can do it really extremely like this, where it's super fast. And that's that creaky door sound. We're going to talk about that a lot when I start to do glitches in this beat, but right now I kind of want this to sound more like a hat. I just want it to be off time, so it's got a little bit of flav. So we'll do that, and then we'll do that. Ooh, that's still too fast for me. And that's not right. Cool, that works a little bit better, maybe a little bit slower even, and maybe he can speed up right here. Cool, that sounds like he's rolling with his hat in this case. So we have those two hat spaces, and now let's copy these over and find some other places later on in the beat that it might be nice to have some hats feel like they're played. So in this section of the beat, we have these 64th notes. Those are cool. I like those. I don't want to change those. See, I don't know if we need the krat, krat, krat kind of thing. So I think we could play one of these spaces. I think this space is a good space to play. So we'll mute all of this. We'll put in our C note, and we can start to do something else here. And let's do something kind of extreme. Let's make it really, really, really slow to fast. That's always a fun direction to go in. So with our rate, we're going to come down, and we'll go from kind of slow to much faster. So he speeds up as he gets all excited to come into this section. Cool, yeah, that sounds good. And let's also do some panning. In this case, we'll go from right to left so that there's a little bit of diversity. And we can also pitch up. Why not? We'll pitch up the sample instead of pitching down. I don't love that. Maybe not so much of a pitch. Yeah, that's cool. It's like he's rolling up the cymbal. So sweet. So now we have a variety of different, our drummer is playing a variety of different rhythms in here. And it's not just the same old hi-hat pattern. So it's really good to find these places in your hats and space them out with a hat player that moves from direction to direction and changes up the overall beat and vibe. Because adding new rhythms and getting off grid is a form of rhythm. It's a form of off rhythm. By adding more rhythms, you're adding excitation and excitement to your beats, just like we were doing with the polyrhythms down here. It makes it feel like this is a sort of fresh take on our beat. So now that we have that, I'll leave that hat player in there, and I'm going to mute it for you. So it's muted, but it's in here. Close it down. And now I'm going to bounce this to audio, because it's good to get your stuff to audio so that you can, like I've said a million times, see it, warp it, reverse it, manipulate it, stretch it, texturize it, all that fun stuff that we'll get to when we start playing with the warp modes. So let me flatten this. Now we're going to put it back up on our hat channels so that we're not taking up a ton of channels. But last thing that I want to show you about this is, see right here, we already have a hat coming in. We don't need these to conflict. So we're going to do it like that. But you can see that this hat is nice and off the grid. It's like a little bit early here. It's a little bit late there. And those kinds of details make it feel really natural. So same with this one. We don't need it because we have this one on the downbeat happening. This hat is working. It's occupying position 21. So we're going to kill that. And we also don't need that little click of the hi-hat transient coming in before. So I'm just going to space that out. Just fold that off. Nice. And finally, the same thing with this. So I kind of like that it speeds up into that position. Perhaps we don't need that one. Let's see how that sounds. Play it with the hat player. Cool. It's like the kick is taking over in that hat space. We could probably get away with that being there, but I don't want too many transients landing at once. Yeah, it could be there, but I'm going to just take it out because I'll roll that way. So sweet. Now we've got that. Now that we have this whole segment of hats that was that works, let's copy that over because I'm pretty sure it was the same thing. Yeah, 99.9% sure it was the same sort of segment. So as you go through your track, you can take the hat player instrument, save it to your user library. Obviously, you're going to name this hat player, save it to your user library where you should be saving all of the stuff that I'm giving you. And then you can put other samples in it. And this is great for rolls. This is great for toms. This is great for snares. There's so many things you can do with the hat player to just spice up your drums by getting things off rhythm. All right, everybody, I hope this was helpful. I guess I'll play the whole beat and then we'll tune out. And next time we're talking about subs and the sub relationship to the kick and the snare, which is where the dancing happens. So I'll play it one more time and I'll see you next week. Cool. And so we'll also dial a lot of these in, dial these in a lot more once we have some instruments to like roll into and to emphasize the certain downbeats and the certain hits and impulses of those instruments, because I don't think this one works all that well. I just want to show you the point. So this is how the hat player works. All right, everybody, thank you for another good lesson, and I hope to see you again very soon. Take it easy.